Today we'll be working in my workbook called David from Anointed to Fugitive, which covers 1 Samuel chapter 16 through 20 and also has Psalm 59. Because David, of course, is a writer of most of the Psalms, and several of the Psalms we can identify where he was when he wrote it. So, looking at the table of contents, we have already completed the first four chapters. And basically, we started with David being anointed king when he was like 13 or 14 years of age. And he's from a small little family in the town of Bethlehem. And so he has no royalty experience. So God sets up a situation in chapter 2 where Saul, who no longer has the Spirit of God in him, has a distressing spirit. It also often bothers him. And the only person that can help his distressing spirit by playing the harp is David. And so this brings David into the royal palace enough to start seeing how things work in the royal palace. He's kind of getting experience. He becomes Saul's armor bearer. And so he's basically his assistant and everything because he doesn't really go to war for Saul in that way. Then we have the story of David and Goliath. Now, David is still about 15 and too young to be part of the army because you have to be 20. His oldest three brothers, he has um, seven other brothers, I think. Um, and three of them are already over the age of 20, so they're part of Saul's army. And so the Philistines and the Israelites are on a battlefront. And instead of fighting, a giant named Goliath goes and challenges the Israelites to have them send one of their um, military man, and they would fight, and whoever wins the whole battle, so that both sides don't have to fight. So he's been challenging the Israelites for over 40 days. And meanwhile, in this time, David is sent by his father to the battlegrounds to bring food to his brothers and see how his brothers are doing. David sees this and he doesn't understand why someone doesn't fight Goliath because, as he says, Goliath is challenging God's people and God will be with them. And so finally, out of desperation, I guess, Saul allows David to be the one to fight Goliath. And Goliath is able, I mean, that Saul allows David to fight Goliath. David then uses three stones and he uses a slingshot and puts a stone in the middle of Goliath's forehead. Goliath falls. David chops his head off and presents that head to Saul. And so he is now, even at the age of 15, now considered someone that Saul doesn't want out of his sight. So at that point, David is part of the kingdom, the royalty, and he is often fighting for Saul. The problem is David is starting to get more praise than Saul is. And Saul then becomes jealous of David because people really love David, but they don't love Saul as much. And so Saul tries every attempt he can to get David killed by sending him out in the war, but David just succeeds and succeeds and succeeds, which doesn't help anything. And they're even, so now we're going to go into chapter 5, where David evades Saul's assassination attempts. At least I think so. Let me look at the cover there and see what happens. I think I've done this one. Yeah. No, I did chapter 5 as well. So now we're going to do chapter 6. Remember chapter 5. So in chapter 5, just so that I explain that too, David evades Saul's assassination attempts. His wife, Michal, who is Saul's daughter, allows David escapes out of the house from a rope, and then she puts an idol in his bed to pretend that he's a sick And so by the time they find out David is far away, Jonathan tries to intercede for David, and so then everything comes back to normal. Um, King Saul realizes that what's the point of him killing David? David's doing all this wonderful stuff for him. So it comes back, and David then continues to fight, and he still continues to succeed, which bothers Saul. So we're back to the same thing where Saul now throws another sword at David. And so we come back to the same thing. David runs to Samuel and Ramah. They go up to the town of Neroth, which is where a lot of prophets are. Um, Saul sends a number of people to kill David. They all end up being prophesying. And so um, Saul goes himself and then he ends up prophesying. So David is protected. So now we come to chapter 6, I guess. And this is Psalm 59, the assured judgment of the wicked, and a poem by David when Saul sent men and they watched the house to kill him. So this is at the start of the prior chapter when they were trying to kill David. Deliver me from my enemies, O God, and be my fortress against those who are attacking me. I was just thinking about this. Um, make sure I have my answers. Deliver me from evildoers and save me from those who are after my blood. See how they lie in wait for me. Fierce men conspire against me for no offense or sin of mine, Lord. I've done no wrong, yet they are ready to attack me. Arise to help me. Look on my plight. You, Lord God Almighty, you who are God of Israel, rouse yourself to punish all the nations. Show no mercy to the wicked traitors. So we have questions now for that. A psalm is a poetry put to music. Most of the psalms were written by David. Of these, only a few psalms deal with a specific period in David's life, and this psalm is one of those. So let me just look at my answers here. Um, see. First question, what happened to David to cause him to write this psalm? Um, Saul is trying to kill David, and so he has sent out messengers to find David at his home. And okay. In the first 4 verses, David makes a direct plea to God for his help. Notice all the me statements. I'm getting there. I think this is it. So, and you can look at this for answers. But A is deliver me from my enemies, O God. B is be my fortress against those who are attacking me. C, deliver me from evildoers. D, save me from those who are after my blood. E, see how they lie in wait for me. F, fierce men conspire against me for no offense or sin of mine, Lord. G, I have done no wrong, yet they are ready to attack me. And H, arise to help me look on my plight. So in these cases that he is bringing attention to God of all the things that are going against him. In Psalms, action words are often repeated to emphasize the thought. What action words are repeated here? So let's look back here, look at action words. So looking at that, let's see what, so the action words that are repeated, we see deliver shown at least twice. We see the word attack, attacking me, um, attack. So at least see those twice. So those are two words that show up several times, which emphasizes the whole point of it. Okay. Did David think he had done anything wrong to cause these evildoers to be coming after him? The answer is no. David uses several titles for God. What are they? So looking again at the page, several titles for God. He uses the word God himself. He uses the word Lord. He uses Lord God Almighty, and you are the God of Israel. Okay. In the last verse, David switches from thinking of only himself to that of his nation. What words does he use to let us know this? You are the God of Israel. So at that point, he changes his idea to looking at Israel, punish all the nations, so no mercy to wicked traitors. So that's where he switches to talk about his nation. The psalm deals with emotions rather than facts. Knowing what David is going through right now, rewrite these verses in your own words. So I would rephrase these verses this way: God, what have I done to warrant this pursuit? I have done nothing, yet they continue to want my death. God, help me. That's how I would put those phrases. Now, continuing in the psalm, they return at evening, snarling like dogs, and prowl about the city. See what they spew from their mouths. The words from their lips are as sharp as swords, and they think, "Who can hear us?" But you laugh at them, Lord. You scoff at all those nations. You are my strength. I watch for you. You, God, are my fortress, my God on whom I can rely. God will go before me and will let me gloat over those who slander me. So now, looking at those questions in verses 6 and 7, David gives us vivid description of Saul's assassins out to kill him. How does he describe them? So, like verses 6 and 7, um, describe the assassins this way: they return at evening, snarling like dogs. They prowl about the city. See what they spew from their mouths. The words from their lips are as sharp as swords. And they think, "Who can hear us?" So that's how he describes them in here. Okay, a dog in ancient Hebrew culture was considered a semi-wild scavenger, not a beloved pet. So most animals, dogs just wandered about. They weren't pets. The city is Gibeah, home to Saul, and where Saul's men felt pretty cocky. They prowl about the city. So they're pretty cocky about where they are in the city. They know exactly where they are. Um, See what they spew from the mouths. This tell us they probably said a lot of horrible things about David. The words from their lip are as sharp as swords. David felt as hurt from their words as their pursuit to kill him. And they think, "Who can hear us?" They probably did not realize their words were getting back to David, and also that God could hear their words. In verses 8 through 10, David focuses his attention on God rather than the assassins. He shows us why he comes to God with his worries. Okay, 8 through 10. We see, but you laugh at them, Lord. You scoff at the nations. You are my strength. I watch for you. You, God, are my fortress, my God on whom I can rely. And God will go before me and let me gloat over those who slander me. So again, but you laugh at them, Lord. On focusing on God, David realizes that God has a plan that does not include his death. So David sees God laughing in contempt regarding the assassins as their cockiness will be short-lived. You scoff at all those nations. Just the same way David sees God's contempt for the neighboring nations who think they're greater than Israel. You are my strength. I watch for you. Just as the men are watching for David to leave his house, David is watching for God to protect him. You, God, are my fortress. David may have to leave the security of his home, but God will be his secure place. And then my God on whom I can rely, God will go before me and will let me gloat over those who slander me. Not only will God take care of the situation, but David feels confident that he will know about it. So continuing again on Psalm 59. But do not kill them, Lord, our shield, or my people will forget. In your might, uproot them and bring them down. For the sins of their mouths, for the words of their lips, let them be caught in their pride, for the curses and lies they utter. Consume them in your wrath, consume them till they are no more. Then it will be known to the ends of the earth that God rules over Jacob. In verse 11a, why does David not want God to kill his pursuers right away? So that his people won't forget what they did. In verse 11b through 13a, David is very specific in how he wants God to handle his enemies. What does he ask for? Okay, what does he ask for? In your might, uproot them and bring them down. For the sins of their mouths, for the words of their lips, let them be caught in their pride. For the curses and lies they utter, consume them in your wrath. Consume them till they are no more. So again, in your might, uproot them and bring them down. Uproot them as David is uprooted. David asks for his enemies to become fugitives like he is. And then we have all these things. B, of course, for the sins of his mouth, for the words of their lips. C, let them be caught in their pride. David asks to have their words trap them so that they are humbled. And D, for the curses and lies they utter, consume them in your wrath. David asks for his pursuers to suffer punishment for their lies. And then E, consume them till they are no more. David asks for them to suffer disgrace, that then he wants them dead. So he wants them to suffer, then he wants them dead. In verse 13b, again, David broadens his prayer scope to the nation of Israel, wanting the enemies of Israel to also be taken care of by God. What will David believe will be the result if God takes care of Israel's enemies? David believes if God takes care of Israel's enemies, then it will be known to the ends of the earth that God rules Jacob. As we talked about before, sometimes words are duplicated for emphasis. Another frequent characteristic of a poem is when the same thought is written twice. We see this in verse 12a and 13a. And 12a, for the sins of their mouth, for the words of their lips. Two ways of saying the same thing. And 13a, consume them in your mouth, consume them till they are no more. Two ways of saying the same thing. Consume them in your wrath, rather. For the sins of their mouth, for the words of their lips. This is the same thought written with different words. Consume them in your wrath, consume them till they are no more. This is the same thought written twice and also using the same word twice. Read 1 Samuel 19 through 24. What happened to these messengers? Were they humbled? Was David able to see it? They were humbled. If you remember last chapter, they went after David. They came to the prophecy center of Naioth, and they all became prophets and prophesied even so they were humbled. So continuing in the psalm, they return at evening, snarling like dogs, and prowl about the city. They wander about for food and howl if not satisfied. But I will sing of your strength in the morning. I will sing of your love, for you are my fortress, my refuge in times of trouble. You are my strength. I sing praise to you. You, God, are my fortress, my God on whom I can rely. David has gone back and forth in this psalm from expressing his fear of his present danger to expressing his hope and desires of God. In verses 14 and 15, he summarizes what is presently happening, giving his enemies several characteristics of stray dogs. So let's go ahead and take a look at them. They return at evening, snarling like dogs. They prowl about the city. They wander about for food. They howl if not satisfied. They return at evening. Just like evil likes the darkness, David sees his enemies increasing their pursuit at night. They snarl like dogs. David sees them like vicious dogs snapping at his family and neighbors. They prowl about the city. Prowl tells us they looked in every corner and alley for David. They wander about for food. Dogs wander about for food. In this case, David's enemies are wandering about looking for the satisfaction of their quest, which is namely David. They howl if not satisfied. Dogs howl in frustration. David sees his enemies getting angry in their frustration when they do not find David. In verses 16 and 17, he summarizes on the idea of God, his protector. So we see, but I will sing of your strength. In the morning, I will sing of your love. For you are my fortress, my refuge in times of trouble. You are my strength. I sing praise to you. You, God, are my fortress, my God on whom I can rely. So again, but I will sing of your strength. Singing is what David does often. It's how he worships God. In the morning, I will sing of your love. His enemies may prowl at night, but David sings in the morning. For you are my fortress, my refuge in times of trouble. Two words that mean the same thing, a phrase that repeats itself, emphasizing the thought that David sees God as his safe haven. And of course, you are my strength. I sing praise to you. You, God, are my fortress, my God on whom I can rely. Do you feel that David had received the peace he needed in this psalm? It appears so. It appears so. So now we come to the end of the chapter, and let's see what we can, what answers we can come up with here. So number 3 across, what is poetry set to music? That's a psalm. Number 5, for you are my, would it be fortress? Yes. For you are my fortress, my refuge in times of trouble. In Psalms, what kind of words are often repeated to emphasize the thought? Action words. 1 down. Deliver me from my enemies, O God. What animal did David compare his pursuers to? Number 2, dogs. Number 4, you are my strength. I watch for you. Who wrote most of the Psalms? David. So that's the end of this chapter. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.